Welcome everybody to Project You, Project Me, the FTG guide to self-belief and self-coaching. Why not come along and listen to people like you, people like me, leaving legacies for your future. So welcome everybody to Project You, Project Me and the Forces Transition Group. So another podcast today, and we're going to do something slightly different. Now, it's very easy for me to sit here and probably interview service people who are currently leaving and or have just left, and perhaps, being out of the military for 10 years. And we'll continue doing that. But we need to have a little bit of a different look at life. So today, I've got a great friend who's been a good friend and mentor to me and many other people in the forces for a long time, and that's Maurice Hepworth. How are you, Maurice?
I'm good, John. Great to see you. Great to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's always nice to see a nice smiling face. And for a bit of background, I met Maurice many, many years ago when I was going through a few struggles after leaving the military. So those who say, well, you've never served in the military, so you can't really help, aren't actually right. Morris kind of put a lot of things straight in my mind with a bit of coaching and actually listening and things like that. So he's an absolutely top guy, and he's done lots and lots of work with military people. But Morris, before we go on, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where you grew up, what you did once you left school, because I know that's really a great story, and what you do now, that kind of stuff.
Um, Hi, I'm Maurice Hepworth. I'm married. I've got to Megan. I've got 6 children, 3 boys, 3 girls, and 9 grandkids. I was born and bred in a little village called Barrisford, which is near Hexham. So I'm a real country Yorkshire, Northumberland lad. Loved growing up there. And when I left, there was only one thing I ever wanted to do in my life. That's be a footballer. So from the age of 7, I kicked around in front of our house in Barrisford every morning and every night as long as I could. And then when I left school, um, I was supposed to be signing for Newcastle, but actually something happened there, and I had to go and get an initial job as a petrol pump attendant in Hexham. And I used to get up at 7, get there for 8, walk up to West Point filling station, fill all the cars up, and do the same every night. And then one day, I was playing for my local team, and a scout from Sunderland arrived. I think I scored 2 that day, and he asked me to go to Sunderland for a trial for a week, and it was Lenny Heppel, Bob Robson's father-in-law, and he was a big mate of Alan Brown, and the rest is history, really. And I was signed as an apprentice professional, and that was the start of a real journey. I was professional from 69 to 76. And then I went to South Africa, and I was out there for 5 years, which was quite a journey. And I came back to the UK in 1980, and I worked in business, and I'm now my own business. I own my own business. So it's been an amazing journey, honestly. Like, we haven't got enough time.
Yeah. Well, I listened to your stories and I've heard your stories, all different kinds of stories, your time in Africa and how you did a lot of and created a lot of change there and things like that as well, which, clearly we can talk about should you want to, but you've also had some bad times in football. Want to talk about that bad injury just about before the FA Cup final and things like that. What happened there?
Well, I was captain of the reserves, and I was in the first team squad for the Wembley final, and 3 of us had to come back to play a reserve cup final against Middlesbrough at Roker Park. And so we travelled back. First minute of that game, um, the ball got played back to me from the kickoff, and a guy called Tony McAndrew kneed me in the stomach. And I got the ball, and I just played a beauty out to Chris Kent on the left hand side.
Mhm.
Totally relaxed, and the knee went into my stomach, ruptured my spleen, burst duodenum, ruptured bowel, and Johnny Waters, our physio, and Martin Harvey saved my life that night because they opened my airways on the pitch and saw the blood as I was bleeding out of my mouth, and I was choking to death, really. And from there, it was into the ambulance, and it was just a real scary time, and I was on the danger list for 2 weeks, and I nearly lost my life. So it was pretty scary, and I didn't see the cup final until my wife bought me the cup final video for my birthday. I think it was my 40th birthday. And that was the first time I'd seen the actual game. And I was in a few tears that day when I watched that. But so it was yeah, I mean, and the Monday after the game, I think the lads had a game on the Tuesday, and they came back to Roker Park and to meet the crowds, and we were 40 minutes late, and that was because they brought the cup into the hospital. And I remember just waking up and seeing Bob Stoker and all the lads at the bottom of my bed with the FA Cup, and that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
Again, a few tears and lots of pain, but yeah, it was. Hey, I mean, it changed my life. That's one part of my life which it changed my life. That injury, absolutely. But then you look, everything happens for a reason, and when you look at where I am now and the journey I've been on,
Mm.
that was the start of the journey, John.
Yeah, I suppose you could say it might be in the beginning of a transition, because one of the things that's close to the military is sport, really. You start in sport very early, just like somebody in the military does, and you may be there for 10, 15, 20, 25 or 30 years if you're lucky, but then it's time to do something else. So you've been through a lot of things. You've been a lot of teams, it's the same as the military. Lots of things that have gone on, maybe good, maybe bad, same as the military. And then all of a sudden you lose or you leave that arena. So in kind of transition, you've done the same thing. How did that go for you?
Transition for me started really. It started that night on the football pitch, and it carried on to South Africa. And then I broke my leg out, and we were doing really well out there. We were double league champions, and and I had a double compound fracture right leg in 79-80 season. Finished my total career. So my transition started really that moment in South Africa. And one of the things that the transition helped me was I had three mentors in my early and mid career, and a couple of those mentors. One of them was a chairman of the football club in South Africa, and another one was a contact that he had in the UK called John Crandall and PepsiCo, which is where I started my transition from football into business. And my first job in the UK was national account director for PepsiCo, and I sold PepsiCo products to Tesco, Sainsbury's, and the transition really was kind of forced on me. But
Mm.
what it did do, it learned that I had to get to know myself. I had to understand the values that I had in football, the things that I was good at. I could transfer those skills into business, especially communication skills and the ability to believe in who you were and
Yeah.
communicate with people. And just from a personality point of view, just get to know people, because football is very much like the army, very much, sorry, like the forces, John.
Mm.
You work on this regimental kind of day, and within football, it's a similar thing. You go into train at 9:30. You train from 10 o'clock till 2 or 10 o'clock till 12. Then you've got the day off. Then the coaches do all your training for you. Your kit's done for you. Your meals. You don't have to do very much. You just have to turn up and train. And so the transition from the real world, to the real world, which is a little bit like, if you look at the forces in football, to what I call the real world outside, unless you start early thinking, okay, now what, this isn't going to last all my life.
Yeah.
Again, it was thrown at me, and I had to get to know one or two very basic things, such as what am I good at? Do I know who I am? What is one of the biggest gifts that I've got, which was communication and being able to talk to people. And so yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's been a journey. I'm still on that journey. I'm still transitioning. Life is about transition. It's nothing stays the same. You know, not you know, you can have this big world, oh, we're transitioning now. But honestly, my whole life is transitioning. It still is. And you take from one part of your transition to another part of transition. You learn again, then you go to the next part of transition, then you learn again, then you go to the next part. So this transition process, to be honest, John, it's never ending in reality.
Yeah. I picked up on some of the things that you've spoken to me before, the who am I question. We try to speak to people a lot about that, because the minute that you start understanding who you are, you can actually move forward pretty quickly. And it was something
Oh,
that you kind of mentioned to me many, many years ago when we first met, when I was struggling a little bit, and you said, well, you know, what is it you want to do? Who actually is John Stephenson? And you know, you have said quite a lot of things to me in the past, and I know we're going to go on about how you've helped military people and how you see that. Um, but it brings us nicely on to, I suppose, adversity or things in your life that have happened that have been pretty horrific and bad, and some of it personal, a lot of it personal, tragedy. Um, and I think it's worth understanding a little bit more about that, because I know you want to get that out there. And I know a lot of military people go through that. Now, I realize this is a kind of difficult part of this session, and we've had, you know, lots of conversations about this, but these experiences that you've had, Maurice, tell me a little bit more about those.
yeah. I mean, it's the last 3 years have been probably, they've been very challenging from a personal um, and the family point of view. Um, the first one was for myself. Actually, I was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, and it was had a massive radical prostatectomy, which took everything away, saved my life, but it took muscles away from my penis, and which meant that all of a sudden you can't really love your wife, and it's all sorts of things and so psychologically and to get through that, it took me probably 6 months of real sort of mindset strength and working with my wife. I mean, she got me through it as well. So, the cancer hasn't gone, but it's under control. And you have to learn how to kind of, well, yeah, let's just live with this, because every day is a new day. And that's how I see my life now.
Hmm.
And then, so we kind of got through that. And the next thing that happened was it was my son-in-law's birthday. And we'd had been around his house. They've got 4 kids and my daughter, and yeah, we had a wonderful day, wonderful birthday. Nothing at all under the surface that I felt was wrong. And the last thing he said to me was, "Hey, you're my role model. I love you so much, and I want to be like you." Next morning, 10 o'clock, I'm cutting the lawns, and my wife Megan shouts out the window, "Mark, Mark, Mark's hung himself." So the house was only 150 yards from where we live. So went round there, and there's Mark hanging, and my daughter and his daughter we cut him down, and I mean, I knew straight away there was not a chance he was going to come back. Like, and when you hear the screams of your daughter, and you see Mark lying, like 10 hours before you were having a great laugh with him.
Yeah.
Next thing he's lying dead on the floor, and the screaming of your daughter, and they're suddenly paramedics arrive, and they've got to do 45 minutes of life-saving um, prognosis and everything. And but we knew within 10 minutes, there was nothing was going to happen. So then, then the police come, they sort it out, take his phone away, they take the belt away, and then the police take the body, the coroner takes the body away, and then you're sitting in the kitchen with your daughter and your family, and you're thinking, oh, did this just happen? Like, so it would take probably too long to get right to where we are now, but the ripple of that decision, ripple effect is still strong. It was something. I mean, I for 6 months I searched myself every morning and every night. Could there have been something that I could have done? Was it something what I didn't see? And I have to be honest, there isn't. I just couldn't. There's nothing more I could have done. And so we're as a family. My daughter is still picking pieces up. She's a lot better than she was. The kids have, we've just had we just pulled together as a family, and we work hard. I mean, I work with suicide prevention now, and I'm in a situation that, and in my whole life, especially my business, I deal with reality, John. I don't deal with theory. Theory's fine in books, but the realities of life. And then 7 months after Mark died, Megan stepped out the shower this Sunday evening, and I noticed a huge lump on her right breast. And I said, "Whoa, hang on a second." And within 2 days, we had her up to the Spire Hospital, and the consultant did all the tests on the Tuesday, and on the Friday she went into Spire to have life-saving mastectomy surgery. The cancer was very raw. It was very strong. It was 10 centimeter. It was a 10 centimeter tumor, and I always remember that night reversing the car out the drive with Megan sitting next to me and thinking, we never said a word on that journey to the hospital. Plus, it was COVID, and I thought to myself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do without her? And so, she had the operation, and last summer, it was Christmas, and every Christmas for 2 years, last Christmas, she had another lump on her other breast. So that took like 3 weeks to test, and it was fine. But you kind of think, here we go again. She's got a sore back at the minute, sore knee, and you kind of worry about the spread. And so I think what it does, it makes you realize how precious life is really, and how to all I try to do is to help other people who've been through prostate cancer. I'm a big advocate of prostate cancer. I work with the NHS, and I work with suicide prevention. I've done a podcast with yourself, which was very good for me that day, John, because it was the first time I talked about it. And my reality is, if you do take that jump off the motorway bridge or whatever it might be, I know what it's going to be like if you do that. I know what's on the other side for the people you leave behind. So I guess for me, life is wonderful. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got my faith, which is a massive part of my life, and I live a day at a time. And I try. My whole life is about unconditional love and giving it to people who need it, and not expecting anything back. And it's a great way to live your life.
Yeah.
So, that's it, really. I mean, there's so much more to tell you, but obviously, I don't want to, bore people. But it's certainly it changes your mindset. And again, when we went back to this transition, there's 3 transitions I've been through there, which we talked about. Transition of prostate cancer to where I am now, transition of suicide, and the transition of my wife's breast cancer. So when I said life is a transition, it is a transition. And one of the things I advocate as well is like, do you know the real you? Because we all wear masks, and I don't wear a mask. Last 12 years, I don't wear masks. I am who I am. I know who I am. And I don't try and kid people. And I don't try and kid people in the world that I'm somebody different than I am, because that's when you get into trouble. And the transition from the military to the real world, it has to be real and it has to be worked at. And the mindset of the individual is very, very important, as is the support and the love of his family, because you can't keep the two apart.
Yeah.
If you're transitioning as a family, you have to transition as a family.
Yeah.
And it has to be a family decision, not just the husband or the father or whatever. It's got to be it's a full transition.
Yeah.
So how does that sound?
Well, I mean, I think there's about 100 different messages there. First of all, you know, I can never thank you enough for saying these things, and I'm being really open and truthful about them. I know this will help many people. I know lots of people who've been in, I suppose, similar situations, or have thought about these kind of scenarios and things like that. And if anyone wants to watch the extended interview with Maurice, it is on YouTube and everything we do, and you can watch that, and it's fantastic to listen to that experience, I suppose, if you can call it that. But it's interesting about this transition piece, and you know, I'd like to keep talking about this, Maurice. Clearly the time we haven't got, but since you've been kind of, or we've met, we have done quite a lot of work, or you've done quite a lot of work with people that we've passed you that are perhaps in a mindset that they don't want to be in. And what have you found, and what have you seen with service people, and is it so different to normal life? Is it, or is there no difference between transferring from the military or transition from military to civvy street, or is it like you say, transition's transition?
No, I think one of the things, I mean, my brother-in-law's ex-sergeant and
Yeah,
ex-staff sergeant major, and so he has his transition, so I understood what it was like for him.
yeah,
And it is pretty tough, because like I said, you guys, you get everything done for you, um similar to a footballer, but even more so, and it kind of takes you away from the real world, so suddenly when you think, right, okay, I'm coming out of the army now, I'm going out all the forces, I'm going out the real world, and it's massive. It's absolutely massive. So what I found, to the guys I've worked with and yourself, you just seem to have no idea in terms of what you're going into, whether it be a job, which is wonderful. What you do, I think, is brilliant. What the Forces Transition Group do. Um, how just how do you take your family from the? It's not just about them. It's about how do you take your family through a transition program, and the family have to go through a transition program with you, and they have to learn. So the wives and the kids, they have the same issues. And for me, uh, the people I've met, the people I've worked with, one of the biggest things that they find is they suddenly don't really know who they are, and they don't have a lot of confidence in themselves, because the world, in the real civvy street world, there's a lot of rejection.
mhm,
And where you may have been successful in the forces, and the transferable skills are definitely there, to go and sell yourself, it's early, mid, late 30s, early 40s, or whatever the age is. It's a whole new personal thing, and it's difficult to remain that real person if you don't understand who that real person is. And that's where, that's one of the things, obviously, I work with all the guys that come to see me. First thing we do, we just say, well, hey, who's the real John? Who's the real Morrison? one of the biggest things for me is, it's listening, and it's listening, but really listening to what's being said and who's saying it.
Mhm.
And I call it listen to the spaces between the lines, because emails, phone calls, you know, family. What are people really saying to you? And then what are you saying to yourself? So who am I? Is probably one of the most important things, John. Understand who you are, and that takes time,
Mhm.
because in forces you are probably 80% who the forces want you to be, and you aren't given that real opportunity to be the real you. And that is one of the biggest things I feel coming into transition.
Mhm.
And that's what I've felt with everyone I've talked to.
Mhm.
The masks, the insecurities, the lack of confidence, the lack of understanding in terms of where they're going, the fear factor, the relationship with your wife, all of a sudden you see more of them, you see more of the kids. And this great saying of mine was, people change and forget to tell each other. So people change and forget to tell each other, and that's massive. So most guys will have been in the army early, or the forces early, married younger. They'll have grown up in their own life there. The wives and the kids will have grown up in their own lives. And when I say people change, you forget to tell each other, those guys have met 16, 17, 20-year-old, married, and then suddenly comes 40 years or whatever, and they're out and they're together with the wives and the family, and they just don't know how to cope with it, because
Mhm.
that's a biggie. That is huge. And again, I think about this, guys. People change and forget to tell each other, and that's crucial. So it's massive transition. It's huge, and it's the same when you give up. It's the same as a footballer, but mine was made for me, because I had to sort myself out. I had three mentors who did that for me in my life. I've had three wonderful mentors. It's probably
Mm.
15-year intervals, who absolutely. I had a mentor in South Africa. I had a mentor in my first role at PepsiCo. Then I had a mentor at Heineken, and those mentors, now I mentor a lot of people right now, and it's about listening. It's about sharing the realities of what that person is, because you learn theory from books, but you learn reality from people who've been there and done it, and have felt the pain, felt the love, and have been through quite a few things that life can throw at you.
Mm. I agree with that. Um, it's kind of what the FTG is about in many ways as well, Maurice, is the mentorship through service is what I believe is what will fix the end. Because
I
if you're
agree.
going to use people who've experienced it, bad, good, then you're going to start walking paths that are actually relevant to you, and you're going to understand who you are. And you're going to get much more out of leaving the military. Um, and one of the things that you taught me, which I lost, I knew when I was young that my biggest attribute was emotion. I knew it was. I could connect with people very, very easy.
Yeah,
And when I joined the military, I lost that, because the military, although it doesn't deliberately throw that out of you, it kind of starts to move away from being an attribute or a skill or whatever you want to call it. And of course, the higher you get up the ranks and you start to manage and you start to get to, sergeant major, RSM, showing emotions probably not where you want to be. Now, on leaving the military, I made a choice to leave the military, whereas you were kind of forced out of yours a little bit. So it happens in both ways in the military too. You could get forced out, or you might decide to leave yourself. But I didn't get my emotion back until I met you. And once I'd met you, then this all started. So when people ask me how or where is all this came from, it's come from you on that day that I met you. because what you did was you drew all that emotion back out of me, and now I use that skill, that attribute to the best of my ability, and it's why the FTG works. The one reason it works is because people buy it. They buy into it because it's relatable, it's truthful, and they feel part of it. It's personal to them, and that's why I believe it wins. And you know, I can't thank you enough for that.
Hey, John, I remember those. I remember the times we spent together. I remember the tears. Um, and just to be there for you, you know that I'm there for you. You know,
Hmm.
well, we've been
You
through
tell me
some
off
good.
often enough.
You what?
You tell me off often enough.
Well, that's also part of being a mentor, because you have to be able to, be honest with people,
Hmm.
and that's how it works, and that's how I work. Emotion. People say, emotion is a real, to show emotion is a weakness. Trust me, it is one of the biggest strengths you could possibly do.
Hmm.
uh, to have, and to be able to let that emotion out, whether it's with your wife, with your children, with your friends, with your colleagues, and the world's not used to emotion, and it's scared of emotion, the world, because they all wear a mask out there as well.
Hmm.
So if you can look in the mirror and find out, and the big thing is for me, John, is if you look in the mirror and you like that person looking back at you, because there are so, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was out yesterday with my wife at Wartworth, and we met a couple of people just on a dog walk, right? And Megan was talking, and I was listening to this lady talking to me, and I knew straight away what the problem was with it. And I said to her, I said, okay, can I tell you something? People talk and forget to tell each other. And her eyes filled up, and then she emptied her whole heart out to me for about 30 minutes. And she said, I can't believe I've just told you what I've told you. And I thank you so much for listening and being able to give me that one nugget of advice,
Hmm.
because I'd been there and I knew what she was going through.
Hmm.
So, emotion is a wonderful thing. Um, for me, I've got four things that I live my life by now. Number one is my faith, but then we go listening skills. I've got to listen. It's not about talking. Good leaders, great husbands, great friends, great mothers, great fathers listen. Um, Storytelling. I mean, we must have told about 10 or 15 stories here already. Um, Transparency. Be who you are, because it's a point of not being, you've got a pretty good idea who you are, and when you're not being transparent, trust me. And the final is similar: authenticity. Be authentic, be the real you, and it takes some serious bottle to look in that mirror and think, I've got to
Yeah.
change here. I've
Yeah.
got to change.
So I suppose they could be looking at them, you know, the three golden nuggets that we talk about at the Forces Transition Group, that ability to listen.
Yeah,
It's actually in the Project You, Project Me guide. It's all
yeah,
about bigger me, that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Um, Storytell, they talk about your experience, listen to experience, that kind of thing,
yeah,
and
yeah,
be transparent and authentic. And I think that's a difficult one for military people. Perhaps I still wear masks to this day. In the military, we wear a mask every day because we're behind a rank.
yeah.
So taking that off when you get home after you've just been in the military for the last 2 weeks on
Mm,
exercise or 6 months on operations is
mm,
quite a difficult mask to remove. But
yeah. Yeah.
to finish,
I
Maurice,
think,
oh,
yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, no, go on.
I was
No, I
just
was
saying
gonna,
to finish, we've got the Project You, Project Me guide, the self-coaching and
yeah,
self-belief guide, which is a lot about what what we're talking about today.
yeah,
Now
absolutely.
you are a professional coach, and I've received coaching from yourself and mentorship, and so have many others. What do you think about that guide? Do
I
you
think
think
it's great.
that's something that somebody could use leaving the military?
I think it's a really great start point, John.
Yeah.
It'll give you the three things I said here. Was one is early understanding and plan the change. And it's the early understanding and change management is in there. It's in there. And again, get to know the real you. And if you really take on board step by step, what what that project looks at, before you leave, you got to start your transition, including your family. It's not just about
Yeah.
you; it's about your family as well. You've all got to do it together. And I've yet to see anything as good as what you've just done there. And I think, if anybody listening to this is transitioning or thinking of transitioning, go and have a look at, go and look at this project and read it and take time. Don't read it all at once. Read it in bite-sized chunks. And, there's a strength and, opportunities, and the strength part that the messages you've got there. You can put it down and really think, okay, be honest with yourself. But for me, John, what you're doing, where you're at, I don't think, well, I know there's nothing else out there like it. And I'm just privileged to have been a small part of helping you start something which I think is totally undervalued even now. And I think it's it's a very special project. It's a very special tool because it's aimed at people, and it's aimed about love, and it's aimed at emotion, and it's aimed at reality, and it's aimed at challenge, and it's aimed at real transition because it is really tough.
What a fantastic kind of way to finish. And to that end, Maurice, I just want to say thank you on behalf of everybody who is transitioning or who has transitioned, and everybody you've helped. I know some of my close friends come to you for lots of stuff as well. I know you've helped my family, and ultimately, like I said before, you've put me onto the path that I needed to be on many years ago. And I only wish I'd have met you, in that very early time, and had a longer time to actually know who you were, because I think I would have been a better person because of it. But I thank you very much, and I know that lots of people will watch this, and I know that we will continue to work together and actually be friends for the rest of our lives. So thank you very much, Maurice.
Absolutely. Hey, John, my privilege, my pleasure. Anybody needs anything, just go through John, and I'm at the end of the phone. No problem at all.
And we'll
Thanks,
put that out
John.
there as well, Maurice. We'll make sure that's on.
Pop it out.
Stay safe.
Okay, you too, John.
Bye-bye, mate.
Bye-bye. Bye now. Bye-bye.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's Project You, Project Me. Thanks for listening in. But remember, we have a Project You, Project Me guide to self-coaching, to self-belief, and it can all be downloaded on our website. We also do the 5 fundamentals: CVs, professional writing. We do brand, we do CPD, making sure you're going in the right direction. We're also looking at your elevation, giving you 2 times the chance to set up your interviews before your first actual interview. And also we look at your financial plan, massively important for your future, for you and your family. So why not come along? Have a look. What you got to lose? It's all free. Stay safe.